So compelling to watch on stage is how the ensemble is bringing these three generations of Ali and Noah to life, where they feel like one character, but distinctly their own. And there's so much subtlety that's conveyed in the costumes and in the movement. What's the creative process been like working with Dorian and John to bring these different Noahs to life, where they feel like one entity, but you're also able to find the color and that contrast?
Well, I think you hit it exactly right. Like we really, it's been a balance between collaborating together to create this one person. So, I mean, at first we, as what's unique about a musical or live theater in general is that you really only get one shot to convey the message to an audience, right? So there's no rewatching, as it were, and it's expensive to do so. So we really made sure to we had sort of these movements. Noah had this, like a sort of like shoulder rubbing, like working a kink out of his shoulder type thing. Ali had this sort of like pressing down the dress situation, like to remain steadfast and all that. And as we got with audiences, we realized that just through like a sort of like symbiotic relationship between all six of the actors, we were adopting each other's sort of isms and things, and didn't need to maybe be so overt about these are the same people, and you spoke to this a little bit, but it's true. Like it's a testament to Paloma, our costume designer, who created these like subtle sort of like hues of browns and blues, but
Yeah.
it's not like we're all three wearing the exact same clothes to sort of beat you over the head with this idea. So it's been nice to sort of relax away from being synergistic in that way and making one person. And at the same time, that has allowed us to really blossom into our own character. And I think what's unique about the show is that it really speaks to the universality of the experience. Of course, like to live a long life with loved ones, whether it's romantic or not, and to lose people and what it means while you're here, to take advantage of those
Mhm.
relationships. And so we, I think, are now able to like sit in our own a little bit and feel confident in the fact that like you are a different person at 30 than you are at 18 than you are at
Yeah.
75. Like you really are. And so it's normal to have a little bit of a split in a way that, as long as the audience understands the concept, of course, which they do, you can sort of play, which is the gift of the show.
But it's also really important to that creative team that each of the actors was able to bring their own lived experiences and authentic selves to this project. What's something that you brought to know that maybe wasn't initially on that page?
Yeah, I'm glad that you noticed that because yeah, that's of course the sort of dilemma that a lot of shows face in sort of wanting to step into a new era of authentic representation of folks. Like you
Hmm.
want to include more voices and more faces and more people in more bodies in a space, but also you don't want to do that and then sacrifice their individuality to sort of wash away all of the authentic representation that you were seeking in sort of like broadening your horizons necessarily. So I'm glad that you felt that way because I do think that our show does a good job of both telling a sort of universal story while also bringing the authentic experiences of each of the actors to it. For me, I mean, I think uh, it's a it's sort of a silly thing, but my sense of humor, I think I really like
Hmm.
brought to the role. I think when I first read the script and when I was getting ready to even start work on the show years ago, I thought, the Notebook has sort of been like memeified over the last many years to be reduced to like the fighting and the scene in the rain and tears and all of it, right? And of course, a human life is much more than that. And so I think
Yeah.
in even in this sort of vitriolic time where they reignite their relationship, there is so much like humor and awkwardness and
Hmm.
like humor HUMOUR, right? Like just like in general, this sort of so that was nice, and I'm glad that they were receptive to that. And over the years, what I'm really proud of is that this role really is as much of me as I am of it now. Like there really is like a synergy that's occurred that now I feel like I can be myself on stage truly, and as long as I'm saying the text and doing what we've agreed, I'm still being true to it. So that's nice as well.
That humor is a nice break and throughout the two acts, especially in that kitchen scene. You know, when we meet your version of Noah, he's at a point in his life where there's a lot of confusion and pain. He's coming back from work. He brought so much nuance and depth to his arc because even in those moments of darkness, you feel that hope. As an actor, how do you create the space for yourself to go into that vulnerable place, especially in the moments where it's more introspective and it's just you on the stage?
Yeah, what's nice is that, in those moments when you really are like bare on stage, you're of course not alone because there's 1,000 people in the
Mm,
audience with you, and I become hyper aware of that in those moments when I'm by myself on stage. Like it's a nice way to check in and begin that conversation as well, and it's not that you're always looking for some sort of verbal affirmation of something that you're doing, and even silence is a stimulus, right? Like even like dead silence is a way of knowing that the audience is connected to you. So there's like a reverence to that I think really helps me to click in emotionally and sort of like spiritually, if you're there, like into the character and into the piece and the mood of it. I mean, we've been so long now without the ability to connect and without the ability to
mm.
gather in these large groups and experience vulnerability together as a group of 1,000. I mean, even a group of three was a stretch at one time in the last couple of years. So to that's not lost on me, and so to like share space with 1,000 people who are
Yeah.
all like there because you're willing to sit and experience something that you're going to feel, it's not like an intellectual exercise as much as it's an emotional one to watch a show. That's profound to me, and so in terms of like really reducing it to the bare humanity of it, that sort of does a lot of the work for me, which I'm grateful for.
Such a great insight from an actor. And this is going to be a strange question because you're a professional, you've built such an illustrious career, but there are moments throughout the performance where you can hear a pin drop in the theater because everybody's so engrossed in the performances. And obviously, everybody's expecting that rain scene. But there's also a moment in Act One where the entire ensemble is there and it's a manifestation of older Allie's memories. And it's so impactful. For you as an actor, has there been a moment that you find hard during the two acts to not be swept away by?
Wow, that's yeah. I mean, certainly there are many, and it's funny that you bring that one up because, you know, I was involved in two other shows prior to The Notebook that were out of town, The Outsiders and Water for Elephants, and so there was obviously a decision to make. And
Mhm.
as people have been asking me about that, I think of like what really was the reason because all shows are strong and beautiful, and I realized it really is because of Marianne, who plays older Allie. Like her just grounding the building in a way that is so beautiful and like effortless, just because of her respect for the work that she and we and the creatives have done is really nice. And and then I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh well, there's not really like a scene where we interact or anything. So it was really just from observing her. But there is one moment in that song that you brought up called "I Want to Go Back," where she, manifests her memories, and I sort of like drink her in for a moment, and she comes up to me, and I turn away at the last minute before she touches my face, and like that is a moment not to be swept away by for sure, just because like her performance is so powerful to me, like
Mhm.
that, especially in the first act. The second act for me, I spend mostly on stage, but the first act is pretty piecemeal. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
time off stage where you can kind of decompress, be with friends, and then ramp up and go back on stage again. And that's a moment, even though it's after, Leave the Light On and these other big moments for me in the first act, where I feel like I really click into the show in like a permanent way just to be able to connect with
Mm.
Marianne. So, yeah, that's been so wonderful to be able to work with her and like alongside her, and it feels like as an audience member like to her process has been very cool.
And selfishly, I would love to hear your rendition of Daryl's songs from The Outsiders. You know, what's also really exciting about theater is that every night is different. And while the framework is set, it's about reacting to your scene partners. How much does John and Dorian's performance on the night influence your own or even Joy's interpretation of Allie on the day?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think what's nice is that once the show begins, John Dorian and I are sort of separate. Like we all are sort of in our
Mm.
lane, like carrying the baton. And of course it can, you can tell when someone's sort of like maybe a little bit more energized or less energized or whatever, and we can come together as a community and sort of like buoy the thing. In terms of Joy, who's like my main scene partner in the show, obviously, that's just been so beautiful. I mean, like she's so present and so beyond her years. Like we've really been able to keep this show and these roles alive in a way that I think this week is our 100th performance on Broadway. It's like it's a lot of recreating the same moments, and so to have somebody who's willing to really be present and just look you in the eye, and it's not that it hasn't been without like challenges in that way. I mean, like I think what's beautiful about our relationship as well is that we really hold each other accountable in terms of like one of us is feeling especially exhausted or like
Hmm.
think fretting about your voice or anything like that, and we've really been able to schedule in the show these sort of check-ins where we just recenter ourselves because it really becomes in the second act almost like a two-hander like between us. It's a lot
Yeah.
of us carrying the thing along, so that's been wonderful. And yeah, I mean, certainly our after having developed it out of town in Chicago and now here, there are things that we love that we will likely never deviate from, but there is of course always room to if the spirit moves you, as they say, right? Like you can sort of do something authentic to you, and there's enough trust and safety there to know that no one's going off the rails, which is nice.
Mhm. Beautifully said. And, outside of this being a love story, like you said, it's also an introspective experience where you leave the theater thinking about how you want to spend your days and with who's been the person in your life who's had the biggest impact on your journey as a storyteller and an artist.
Hmm. I've had two. One, of course, I grew up in San Jose, California, and there's a children's theater there that happens to be the largest children's theater in the country, Children's Musical Theater of San Jose. And so I grew up really starting there as a hyperactive kid that needed to put their energy somewhere, which I think is the story for many artists starting out in theater. And I then was able to I was told enough, like I think you should keep doing this, like not just as a hobby. And the first person to really say that was the artistic director there, Kevin Hauge, who actually was able to come and see the show the other day. And like he comes to New York to see, the alums and things, and it's a very special thing. And then in high school, I had a drama teacher named Tom Alessandri who passed away in 2017, I think, and he was sort of like the other half of that coin. They were always producing plays, and he was very like he was a gritty sort of like theater person, right? Like that you would sort of central casting for drama teacher type thing, and he really like brought me up during that time as a young person and as an artist. And I think of him like every night, like when Joy says, like, and what about Finn? Did he make it back or whatever? Like
Hmm.
I think about him, and I think about the actor who played Older Noah in Chicago, John Beasley, who passed away at the end of the run. And so like this story is just full of like people's sort of like spiritual account of everything that they've gone through, and I think that that's gorgeous. Like I think we've really created a safe space to feel here, and we were sort of reminiscing on that recently and just thinking about like for those of us who have been developing the show for a while, every time we get back together and read the script, every time there's some sort of added next step of a designer run or the first rehearsal for Broadway or the first tech day in Chicago or anything like that, we all have collectively like held each other while we've really poured out emotionally because it's such an emotional show. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for this community. Like that has been such a blessing to have that catharsis in like a safe, really truly safe place. So yeah, there's a lot of lore.
You feel that trust and vulnerability as an audience member as well. And as you were saying, you've been a part of this production for several years now, and this is very much a memory play. When you look back at this experience thus far, what's that memory that's going to stand out to you? And I know you're planning on getting a tattoo after the show is done to commemorate this experience. Have you had ideas about what that might be?
I mean, in terms of the memory, I think the greatest. I mean, there are many, but the one that is sort of like flooding my mind right now is the in Chicago, the first day that Joy and I saw the rain. We came
Mm,
in on a day off, like to sort of test the rain and see what it would be like, and it wasn't something I had seen up close on a stage before like that. I'd seen a play or two with rain in it, but like to just be there so close and see like the impact of what that moment would be. And I think what's cool about that is I sort of relive that moment every night because as an actor you're always you're always imagining the circumstances. You're always like creating something in your mind of like this person is Allie Nelson, like that hair is not her wig. You know, like you're working to imagine these things. And it's rare that you get to do something, even a moment in a show that feels truly real. And so there's something about just getting drenched with joy like every night and like
Mm.
laughing because there's literally water like running into our eyes and like that will never get old. It will never because it will never be an effort to manifest what that experience is. It will be real every time. And so that's gorgeous. So I'll never forget that first time of seeing the rain there. So I don't know what the tattoo will be, but I have many already, so it'll be something sweet.
Yeah. I got one final question for you. You never know who's sitting in the audience, who's somebody who hasn't made an appearance yet that you hope does during this run.
I hope that Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers will come to see it, who are on the podcast Las Culturistas. I love that podcast. I often quote it. I know that they would love it just because the music is so gorgeous and they love
Yeah.
theater and musical theater, and I just like that would be a fun one. But of course, the answer I feel like obligated to give is Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling. But of course, that would also be cool.
Yeah, Rachel's in the city now. She probably will
I
make an
know she's
appearance
right
for
down the
sure.
block. We went to her opening of her play, so I think she can make her way over.